Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It is pre-match build-up showtime for the first competitive sort of game of Liverpool's 2019-20 season. I am, of course, talking about the game we're playing this weekend on Sunday at 3 o'clock at Wembley Stadium. It's the Charity Shield or Community Shield, whatever you want to call it, match against Manchester City. And I'll give you my first thought on this game straight up. I don't really like the fact we're playing Manchester City for an extra game because personally, I think one of the things that works best against them is the element of surprise. The way, we sort of jumped on them in the 2017-18 season with those Champions League games and the 4-3 game at Anfield as well, where they just didn't really know what to expect and they didn't have time to work out how to counteract what we were doing to them. You look at that game at Anfield, the 3-0, we managed to get 3 goals in the space of half an hour. So by the time Man City had worked out how to stop us attacking and stop us creating so many chances, we were already out of sight. And I think what we saw last season was the byproduct of the fact we beat them 3 times in the space of about 3 months the season beforehand. Pep Guardiola had started to come up with some really, really good ideas of how to neutralise Liverpool, and it did also come at the expense of, his own attacking philosophies and everything like that, but it did mean that City managed to take 4 points off of us last season. They were the ones who came away with a win and a draw. We came away with a loss and a draw. They ended up winning the league by 1 point. We lose the league by 1 point. We all know what happened there, but I just don't like the idea of playing Man City so often. I think we're much better off retaining that element of surprise and, hitting them and catching them off guard in the few games that we actually play against them during the season. So I don't really like the idea of having one more game against Manchester City. However, it is a huge chance to lay a marker down as well. It feels like we can lay the first blow in the title race early on because the fact of the matter is we're not playing them until November, and it's, you might say that last season was a bit of a fluke and we can't expect that to happen again, but it's entirely possible that Liverpool and Man City go into that game in November at Anfield having not lost a game yet all season, or maybe even won every single league game up to that point. So the chance to actually put a loss on their record book already is incredibly, incredibly important, and I feel like we do have to take it. And, the argument there is also, whether or not it's silverware, whether or not we should take it that seriously. The players certainly seem like they care. What they've been saying is they don't see this as a glorified friendly or a curtain raiser. They see this as another trophy to add to the books, and I kind of support that idea. I think now we've broken the duck with the Champions League, just get as many as possible. Obviously the Super Cup is a week and a half afterwards, and I think that's certainly a bit more prestigious than this. I'd rather, if I was given the opportunity of the two, I'd rather win the Super Cup because I think it looks better. It's got a better name as well. It's European, which is exciting. Whereas this does feel like, that kind of game where if you're not in it, no one really cares. Everyone's just going to watch it for the sake of watching it. No one's going to watch it thinking, oh, I'm excited to see the outcome of this. But yeah, it's a chance to lay down an early marker and to get a shiny thing, put it that way. It might not be a major trophy, but it's something shiny to stick in the cabinet and say, look what we won. And it stops them from counting it in their quadruple should they do the same thing next year as they did the season just gone with that whole Formidables thing, which was total nonsense. You cannot add the Community Shield to a treble, but, if we win it in the Super Cup, then we've definitely won the treble, just to get that one out of the way as well. But yeah, so it's a weird game. It's hard to really gauge how to feel about it, although I think with the fact we also had a poor pre-season as well, results haven't always gone our way. I know I haven't done many videos throughout this pre-season. I've been so incredibly busy that I've barely been able to catch most of the matches I still actually need to watch. The game against Napoli, the 3-0 loss, can I be bothered? I mean, we'll see. If I've got a spare 90 minutes on my hand and fancy making myself miserable, then yeah, I'll watch it. But yeah, the pre-season hasn't exactly been great for Liverpool so far, and I think, this would give us a fantastic boost going into the game against Norwich. And I also think just the fact we're playing a competitive game, albeit one that doesn't really matter, is a great way to psych ourselves up for the game against Norwich, just because it means the players won't be coming in from the cold so much. A lot more of them will have had a 90 minutes under their belt. I'll come on to in a bit later on in the video what I think about the starting 11 and how we're going to handle certain players' fitness and stuff like that. But it'll certainly help them get a little bit more rhythm that you just can't get with pre-season games. And of course, it's at Wembley. There's going to be 2 really excited sets of fans there. I'm going to be there as well, and I guarantee once I go through that turnstile and I go out to my seat, I'm not going to be thinking of it as a pre-season friendly anymore. I'm going to be thinking it as a match that I'm desperate for Liverpool to win, and I'm sure Man City fans will be thinking the same way. So just getting a taste of that atmosphere atmosphere, getting a taste of what competitive football feels like against, the best team in the country at the moment. Debatably, it could be us, it could be City, fine margins and all that, but they are certainly the team that are going to test us more than anyone else this season. So it's a great way to psych ourselves up for Norwich and just to kind of put the pre-season behind ourselves a little bit and show that now the real competitive stuff is happening. The real Liverpool is once again showing up. So team news going into the game. The interesting thing about this one, obviously, with it being so early on in the season, they've been a bit merciful, the Football Association, and they've said, while you can still only name 7 subs on the bench, you can make 6 throughout the game, which is fantastic because obviously we have so many players who have only just got back or have only had limited minutes in pre-season. You look at Firmino and Salah. Firmino only played half an hour. Salah only played 45 minutes in the game against Lyon. So by no means are they ready to play 90 minutes in a competitive fixture against a team as good as Manchester City just yet. So that's a huge boost, obviously, and I think it certainly helps us decide exactly how we play it because it means you can sort of make 45th minute substitutions. I think we will maybe see a couple players, if not, a huge amount of them, who only play the first half or maybe don't start but come on for the second half and play that part of the game instead. So it certainly gives us a wonderful opportunity to actually give more players match fitness and maybe just give a few players, especially youngsters who've impressed in pre-season, a little bit more of a taste of competitive football before, the actual competitive stuff starts, and maybe the amount of minutes that they actually can hope to get with the first team will be very, very limited. Obviously, that's all dependent on cups as well, but for now, at least, it'll be nice for players like Brewster, LaRucci, I'm trying to think of another one, Harry Wilson as well, who can just get a few more minutes under their belt, and obviously it'll be a wonderful occasion for them. In terms of player availability, Mane is, of course, still unavailable. He hasn't actually returned to training yet. I think his return date is the day after because of how deep he went in AFCON. Man City have got a similar situation there with Algeria and Riyad Mahrez. That's another thing I'm going to come on to later on in the video, how they've sort of been coping with pre-season and players coming back in dribs and drabs due to the amount of summer tournaments that have been going on with AFCON and the Copa America. But yeah, so Mane is not going to be able to play this game. There are, of course, several players, like I mentioned, Firmino and Salah, who've only played a few minutes in pre-season so far, so almost definitely won't be able to play the full 90. But as for how I think we're actually going to line up, I think in goal, Alisson Becker, of course. I mean, there have been a few shouts for Mignolet because obviously he's the cup keeper, and does this count as a cup game, I guess? But I do think, Alisson obviously looked ever so slightly off the pace in the game against Lyon. Took him 5 minutes to work out, how to catch the ball and stuff like that. And that did obviously cost us a goal in that match. So I think maybe just giving him a full 90 minutes to settle him just a little bit more before the game actually starts and, get all the alcohol out of the bloodstream that's obviously still hanging around from the parade where he put in a fantastic performance on that bus through the city. But yeah, I think Alisson has got to start, and obviously he's Liverpool's best goalkeeper by a country mile, and if we want to start settling the back line going into the competitive games, I think we want to play our first choice keeper, because it's something I noticed throughout pre-season that Simon Mignolet, I forgot how much he actually seems to unsettle the back line, or maybe that's a little bit harsh, maybe it's more the other way and it's more how much Alisson settles the back line because he is so assured. They know what type of player he is, all the defenders know when he's going to come for the ball, when he isn't, what he's going to do, where he likes to push the ball out into when he can't actually hold on to it and stuff like that. So I think you play Alisson, you start settling the back line now, and with that in mind, I think we go with sort of the full first team, full strength back line that I think we're going to take into the competitive games as well. That means Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back. I think Matip and Van Dijk at centre back. There's been a lot of debate about whether or not it's Matip or Gomez. I think Lovren's a little bit out of the picture, but obviously Gomez was fantastic alongside Van Dijk in the first half of last season, and we essentially see him as the future of Liverpool's, centre back outfit. Him and Van Dijk, I think, are what everyone sees as a pairing that could go forward for another 5 years or something like that. So certainly he'll get some minutes this season, but I think at the moment, given how many times Matip and Virgil have played alongside each other in pre-season, and just the fact that Matip was so brilliant at the end of last season, and while we know that Gomez is the future, you've got to instill a culture where players know if they perform well and they earn a place in the side, they're going to keep it. And so if Matip performs so brilliantly and is essentially the man of the match pretty much in a Champions League final, to then bomb him out of the side is not going to do any wonders for squad morale whatsoever. So I think he starts his this game alongside Virgil van Dijk. And then I think Andrew Robertson completes the back line. Going into midfield, this is where we've got a lot of options, but I think a lot of options, none of which are entirely perfect because of the varying states of fitness that we've got. I think Fabinho is absolutely nailed on to start as the number 6. He's played a lot in pre-season compared to the others because he, for whatever reason, God knows why, was not taken away with the Brazil squad for Copa America. So he's had a slightly more normal summer than a lot of our players have had. So he definitely starts, and he's obviously an integral part of the way we play now. He is an absolutely fantastic defensive midfielder, and I think he's only going to get better in a Liverpool shirt this season. Now he's had a full season and 2 pre-seasons under his belt with Jurgen Klopp. I think the other 2 midfielders, the ones that are going to be a bit further forward, I think Henderson probably got to play. He's played enough for pre-season. He was fantastic towards the back end of last season. I think his style suits this game, you know, the energy, the way he positions himself, the fact that he can, you know, do things going forward, but he can also drop in alongside Fabinho and help out defensively, means he's perfect for this match. And then the final midfielder, I think, is going to be James Milner. And this is the slot where I think there's the most amount of debate. I think some people see Gini Wijnaldum playing there because obviously, you know, he's great. Some people think that Keita should play there, although obviously there's fitness questions there. Other people are saying Oxlade-Chamberlain. I can certainly see the Oxlade-Chamberlain shout because when you look back at those games where we did perform so well against Manchester City a couple of seasons ago now, Oxlade-Chamberlain was integral to those performances. The way he pressed, the way he operated in the spaces between the front 3 and the midfield. When we were out of possession, he was probably our best player, certainly in terms of an attacking sense. So I think it's an obvious shout for him to play in this game, and I think he'll definitely get some minutes. But I think it's going to be James Milner in that role simply because he's the pre-season man for Liverpool. We saw it last season where, you know, while he didn't play that many games as we got into it and we got to the latter stages and stuff like that, in the first few months, he was an integral player for Liverpool. And I think a lot of people have forgotten that. At the time, around September and October, people were actually saying James Milner is our most underrated player, our most important player at this stage of the season. And that, I think, is because A, he keeps himself in fantastic condition, and B, he's got no international commitments whatsoever. So he always gets a full pre-season under his belt, and he always shows up in absolutely fantastic condition anyway. So I think James Milner will definitely play this game. I think we'll see a fair amount of him in the first few months of the season before some of the other guys gradually come into fitness a little bit and the dynamic of the way we want to play games changes. And also, Klopp likes Milner in big games. We saw when he came on, you know, in the game against Tottenham Hotspur in the Champions League final, we put in a fantastic performance in the midfield there. He was great in both positions he played in the second leg against Barcelona. So Klopp likes him for these types of games, so I think he will get the nod from the start. But there's certainly, I think Keita's going to come on at some point to get minutes. I think Ox is going to come on at some point to get minutes. I think we might see Shaqiri as well, maybe in a midfield role. Maybe that's something that we'll see a little bit further forward. You've obviously got to think about Klopp's Lallana as the number 6 experiment, whether he decides to just do a sort of trial by fire thing where he just throws him straight in for this game and sees how he copes up against probably the best midfield and attack in England apart from ours right now. So yeah, there'll be a lot of rotation. I think pretty much all of those spots except Fabinho will be rotated out by the end of the game, but that's how I think we're going to start off. And then moving forward to the attack, another place where I think we will change a lot during the game. I think Salah and Firmino are going to start. I don't really think it makes sense to bring them off the bench. I think you sort of get them into the rhythm of warming up before a match, playing in the match, and just see how far they can go, because while people say, you know, if you sub them, they can maybe play only half an hour if they're not entirely feeling up to it. But that is also a slightly odd routine. You know, you warm up, then you go back in, then you don't play. You warm up, you sit down, you warm up, you sit down. Then you get thrown on when the game's kind of already set its tempo and you have to settle into that rather than try and dictate it yourself. So I think it makes more sense to actually start them. And, you know, with any luck, we'll be 3-0 up before half-time anyway, and we can take them off and wrap them in cotton wool ready for the game against Norwich. So I think Salah on the right, Firmino down the middle, and then I think Origi completes the front line. Obviously, with the amount of attacking players that have been missing over pre-season without Salah, Firmino or Mane, and Shaqiri as well for the vast bulk of it, we've essentially done a lot of experimentation. We've seen Ox and Wijnaldum further forward. We've seen a lot of younger players come through. So I think people's decisions have been slightly clouded by that. People are now wondering whether maybe we should chuck Brewster in. I'd love to see Brewster at some point in this game. I think it's fantastic. You know, like I said, it's a great experience for these players where they get this full, you know, charade of it being a big game, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So Brewster could play and get all that experience, but say he misses a penalty or misses a sitter or anything like that, or just doesn't play a brilliant game, it's not going to set him back massively because he's hardly going to be kicking himself when all we're missing out on is a big plate, essentially, essentially is what the Community Shield is. That's another reason I don't really like it, and I don't think it's as good as the Super Cup. The trophy just doesn't look very good at the end of it all. So yeah, I think Brewster will get some minutes, but I think Origi will start simply because, you know, he's good. He's had a solid pre-season. He played well towards the end of last season. He's shown that he can play that left wing role incredibly well. I think if we're trying to play attacking football, his aggressive style of dribbling should be very, very useful as well, even though it's slightly set back by the fact that I think his passing going forward, especially in quicker to counter-attacking moves, isn't always up to scratch. But I think he definitely starts the game, and then maybe I'd quite like to see Brewster, maybe even Harry Wilson, possibly even a bit of Harvey Elliott if we're feeling a little bit crazy later on in the game. But start with the big guns and see how we go from there, I think is the best policy for Liverpool going forward into this game. So taking a little look at Man City then, obviously everyone, especially on Twitter, maybe not so much in, you know, the real world, but certainly online, people have been losing their minds about Liverpool's pre-season, losing their minds about transfers and stuff like that, and just basically thinking that everything's completely gone to pot and we're having the worst summer ever, and everyone else is either absolutely fine or just getting so much better and is going to leapfrog us every season, this season, and stuff like that. Whereas in fact, when you look at it, you know, no one's really had a perfect pre-season, and Man City are included in that bracket. They've only played 4 games as opposed to, I think, the 6 that Liverpool have played. It was 3 in the US. Actually, it was 7 because it was 3 in the US, 2 before and 2 after as well. So we've played more games than them. And when you look at some of their players who've come back late, you know, Aguero and Jesus and Otamendi as well, who've all come back late because of the Copa America. None of them have actually played a game because I don't think Man City have kicked a ball in, you know, an actual football match since they left their tour of Asia. They played 2 games in the Asia Trophy there, which they ended up actually losing on penalties to Wolves, and they played 2 games against some Chinese or Japanese teams. Apart from that, they haven't really had much experience. So Liverpool have actually had more difficult games, certainly more intense matches, especially because I think what we noticed throughout pre-season is that teams knew we were the European champions, and that gave them an extra incentive that we didn't have, especially like, you know, the game against Sevilla. They were desperate to win that, and they did it by any means necessary, I think it's fair to say. So they've had a very different pre-season to us in terms of the amount of games that they've actually played. That, of course, is no surprise, really. We know Jurgen Klopp likes to play more games than the average manager, but I think especially with the Community Shield coming so early, it will have a bearing on how they're going to perform. So, you know, like I said, Aguero and Jesus haven't even played a game yet, so to throw them in from the start and not take them off at half time at the latest would be a bit of an odd move from Guardiola. And so instead they've been doing stuff like playing Sterling down the middle in pre-season. You know, when you look at the players, certainly in an attacking sense that they have already got that haven't been away on tournaments and stuff like that, they do actually look pretty good anyway. So there's still a team to be feared regardless of who isn't available. But one area they do have a bit of a concern is centre-back, because obviously Company has now gone. He's left them, and, you know, thank God, as a Liverpool fan up against him in the title race, you know, he essentially won it for them at the end of the day. So I'm quite glad to see the back of him, as much as he is a fantastic guy and a great sportsman. So it's hard to really knock him on a human level. But as a team that's directly in competition with Man City, we can certainly knock him on a footballing level and be happy that he's gone. But yeah, he's obviously not going to be available for them. Laporte is also a doubt as well. He's picked up a knock, so they're saying that he might not play this weekend. He might also not play the Premier League curtain raiser against West Ham for them in a week's time, which is another boost for Liverpool, because, you know, even when we're not playing Man City, we are essentially as invested in their games now as we are in our own, because of the nature of the title race and the nature of the two teams and how they just keep on winning no matter what. But yeah, no Company, no Laporte, and Otamendi returning late as well. You know, like I said, hasn't played a game because he was with Argentina in the Copa America and got back incredibly late, like some of his compatriots and other South American players. So, you know, the only real centre-back they've got that is fit and firing for this game is John Stones. The other options they've got, of course, they could drop Fernandinho deep. There's talk of maybe Danilo coming in and playing centre-back out of position, just because maybe that's something they've done a little bit in pre-season. I think there's a youngster called Eric Garcia, if I'm remembering his name right. But essentially, things aren't exactly rosy for Manchester City there, and that's certainly an area where Liverpool can maybe go for the jugular, and that's why I think play our best attackers from the start. Play Salah, play Firmino, play Origi as well, because those are the best 3 that we've really got available at the moment, because if they can bag some goals against Man City's defence, regardless of who's playing in it, that's going to give them some confidence as well. And, you know, maybe if Otamendi's only got half an hour in his legs, he gets brought on later on in the game. So try and win it early on. We can rest our players and we can let them, you know, bang on the door and trust that our defence, given that most of our defenders have actually played not full 90 minutes, but have played a lot of football over pre-season. You know, none of them really came back super late, so they've all had a bit of time to gel together. I think we will actually be defensively solid, hopefully, in this game, although of course Manchester City are going to be unpredictable with the whole situation with Sterling playing down the middle. God even knows whether Leroy Sané is going to play because of what's going on at the moment. I've got my fingers crossed every day and every night that he moves to Manchester City, because out of all their players, he scares me the most because he's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, City are not perfect, and I think that has kind of been overlooked. So hopefully this game will sort of give Liverpool fans who are stressing about pre-season a bit more of a barometer of where everyone else is at. Because if City aren't doing, you know, 100% perfectly yet, then by no means are any other team going to be doing so, because City and Liverpool are essentially the best teams in the land at the moment. So yeah, at the end of the day, if we win, great, fantastic. You take all the positives. It's a shiny thing to lift. It's a great way to get going for the season. More minutes in the bank in a sort of competitive game for some of our first teamers who returned late. That's something to rub Man City's nose in as well. And if we lose it, who's really arse, let's be honest. At the end of the day, it is just a glorified friendly. You know, you take what you want from these type of games, really. I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm going, so I'm hoping the atmosphere will be pretty good. I'm at the back row of the back tier of Wembley, so it's going to have to be pretty brilliant if I'm going to enjoy myself. But anyway, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I'm sorry that I didn't really have many over pre-season. Like I said, I was so busy, I barely even had time to watch the games, let alone actually put out any content. But I'm a little less busy now, and of course, the real football is back. So once again, I'm going to be trying to bring pre-match videos for every game, post-match videos for every game, any sort of news updates when anything happens. Nothing's really happened so far this summer, certainly in terms of the transfer window. But Liverpool, if you want to, you know, start a saga over the next week, then I'm more than happy to make some videos to actually track how it's going to go. But in the meantime, that is all for today's video. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then hit that like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that I put out on the channel. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter. And I'll see you on Sunday after we've hopefully lifted the big silver plate at Wembley. Until then, bye for now.